It is clear that Kenny Payne and the Louisville Cardinals are prioritizing Karter Knox and Kon Knueppel in the 2024 class. We'll talk about both and their recruitments on today's episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. As always, I want to thank you all again for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder that the show is free on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Well, as we mentioned in the opener, the Louisville Cardinals are prioritizing two 2024 prospects, Karter Knox and Kon Knueppel. We'll talk about Knox, including Louisville in his top 8 list cut. We'll talk about Knueppel scheduling an official visit to Louisville for the middle of next month. And then to conclude the show, we will dive into the weekly mailbag. So before we talk about Knox and Knueppel, I do want to say that just because I am saying that Kenny Payne and company are prioritizing these two 2024 prospects, I'm not saying that they are the only prospects that Louisville is prioritizing. So don't take this in a way that I'm saying that these are the only two guys that Louisville is prioritizing, because that's not necessarily the case, right? And I don't think that many people would do that, but it feels like nowadays you have to pretty much spell out what you are saying so that others don't, assume that you're saying something else. But nonetheless, Louisville has one commitment in the 2024 class. That is point guard TJ Robinson from New York State. And obviously Louisville will look to add some big-time prospects in the class. One player that the Cardinals have been in contention for ever since Kenny Payne took the head coaching job at Louisville is Karter Knox. The 5-star, he's listed as a small forward, but truthfully, I think he's more of a shooting guard than a small forward. 6'5", 205-pound native of Tampa, Florida, plays at Tampa Catholic High School. Was on campus for the Louisville Live event back in the fall, and obviously has ties to the program via his relationship with Kenny Payne, his family's relationship with Kenny Payne. For those who don't know, Payne was a huge he played a huge role in the recruitment of Kevin Knox, Carter's older brother, who played for John Calipari and Kenny Payne at Kentucky, went on to play for the New York Knicks or get drafted by the New York Knicks. So there's obviously that relationship there with the family, but not only with the family, with Knox himself as well. So it's pretty clear that Louisville seems to be in the, right in the thick of things. They're listed in the top 8. I do want to read what Knox said about Louisville in his top 8 for reference. The top 8 is Arkansas, Auburn, Florida State, LSU, South Florida, G League Unite, which is the NBA G League team, and Louisville and Kentucky. And obviously this seems like it could definitely come down to a bluegrass showdown between the Cards and the Cats. But I do want to read what was said about Louisville. He basically said, Coach Payne, I've known him a long time. Ever since Kevin was being recruited, I've been around him. So since I was like 12 years old, he really helped my big brother get to the NBA. He snapped on him when he needed to, got him out of his comfort zone, and he's like another uncle to me. What stood out on the visit was the coaching. They are a really good coaching staff. They weren't as good as a team in the first year, but I'm not worried about the future. It says I'm worried about the future, but I think it was implying it. I think it was actually a typo that I'm not worried about the future. That first season is in the past. I'm not worried about that. So, yeah, that kind of confirms that. So, it is what it is. I think that it makes a lot of sense that this is going to come down between Louisville and Kentucky, considering that the ties to both programs. I will say that although it does seem to come down between Louisville and Kentucky, I'm still not ruling out a couple of schools, although I do think they're on the outside looking in. We've seen, obviously, the NBA G League Ignite, really start to close deals late in recruiting processes by offering deals that can't be refused. It seemed like Ron Holland was going to go to Arkansas, then all of a sudden he goes to G League Ignite. So, you can't rule them out. You have Arkansas, who has done a great job of recruiting with Eric Musselman. Let's see. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think Karter Knox's other brother plays at South Florida, if I'm not mistaken. Could be completely wrong, but I did think that his brother played at South Florida. I feel like I should have already looked that up, but nonetheless, I mean, it is what it is. Kobe Knox, his other brother, just transferred to South Florida. So it seems like if he has a good time there, that could definitely be something to look forward to. Obviously, Florida State in the mix here as well. But I think that at the end of the day, and then Auburn and LSU also lurk in this recruitment. But I mean, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I think you have Louisville and Kentucky on pretty similar levels. And then under that is sort of the next, tier of programs that are going after him, in terms of possibilities. I think it's a battle between Louisville and Kentucky with a bunch of the other teams on the outside looking in, but still well within striking distance. I do think that this is going to be one of those that comes down to, well, how well can Kenny Payne recruit up against John Calipari? Since he's taken over at Louisville, only a handful of prospects have the Cardinals and the Cats gone up against each other. DJ Wagner, Aaron Bradshaw, both of them went to Kentucky. I know that Rob Dillingham had Louisville in his final list, but from the people that I've talked to, it seemed like Dillingham was never a serious option for Louisville and vice versa. So, that might have been for looks. So I don't necessarily count that one. Other than that, I mean, there's not another prospect that, Louisville has gone head to head with and where it's been kind of a Louisville-Kentucky battle that the Cardinals have won just yet. Am I saying that Kenny Payne cannot win a recruiting battle with John Calipari? I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm just saying, you have to be cautious when saying, well, the relationship's there with Kenny Payne. Well, it's there with John Calipari too. So as good of a relationship as that is, I probably doubt that that's going to be, the end-all be-all, because it seems like there's two great relationships there. It'll be interesting to see when Knox decides to make that decision, because I think that that's going to play a factor in it as well, especially if it's later on in the fall, the winter, early 2024, and the Cardinals show some improvement. So, it kind of confirms the notion that Kenny Payne's going to, be able to turn this program around. But Knox, top 10 player, ranked as the 8th best player according to 24/7 Sports Composite, one of the top 3 best scorers in the EYBL, recently has shown off his ability to extend and hit that three-point shot, but also, his underrated post game, does a great job of utilizing his size, only listed at 6'5", but plays taller than 6'5", uses that, athleticism and that long frame to be able to create his own shot in the post. Does a good job of getting to the basket. Very crafty ball handler. I like the defensive upside there as well. And obviously a pretty solid athlete in terms of bounce, in terms of being able to jump up and posterize people. There's been multiple clips of him dunking over people. The ability to get into the lane, finish through contact. I don't necessarily look at Knox's game and think that there's one weakness. I think that he is a score first two-way type of two guard. I think that he's a two guard at the next level. I don't necessarily know that he's more of a wing as much as he is a two guard. So I think that this is going to be a situation where, hey, look, Louisville and Kentucky right there going head to head. Louisville's going to have to put the full court press and hope that it's enough. I understand that there's concerns about going head-to-head with John Calipari, especially with how the national media portrayed Louisville in the lead for DJ Wagner and in a good spot for Aaron Bradshaw, and both of them ended up going to Kentucky. So, but a different recruitment. So we'll see how that pans out, and hopefully this is a situation to where Louisville can come out on top. So definitely one to focus on here moving forward. One of the best players in the class, regardless of position, in a class that doesn't necessarily have a true number one. I definitely think he could be potentially competing with a top 5 ranking come this time next year. So he's definitely a player that Louisville is prioritizing, will continue to prioritize up until signing day. And obviously, it seems like that interest is reciprocated with him, including Louisville in his top 8. But there's another prospect I want to talk about on today's show. It's Kon Knueppel from Wisconsin. We'll talk about him scheduling an official visit to Louisville here in the next couple of weeks. We will do that here momentarily after we talk about our friends over and the title sponsor of the show, FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the remainder of the NBA playoffs. The NBA Finals is just a day away. Right now, new customers getting no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if that first bet does not cash in. A lot of great things to talk about when talking about FanDuel. There's fantastic promotions every single day. There's a safe and secure app that you can use, and you can even get paid instantly. There's no better place to place those bets on all of the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, so heading on into the second segment of the show, we just talked about Louisville prioritizing Karter Knox, another prospect that has been talked about a lot recently that Louisville is prioritizing is Kon Knueppel from Wisconsin Lutheran up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 2024 small forward, sort of like Karter Knox. I think he projects more of a shooting guard rather than a small forward, being 6'5", 205. Actually, they're both listed at 6'5", 205. According to the 24/7 Sports Composite, the 32nd best player in the country, 11th best small forward, #1 in the state of Wisconsin. Louisville offered Knueppel back in January, and since then hasn't really been talked about a lot in terms of the connection with Louisville. But over the past week or so, I think Travis Branham of 24/7 Sports broke the news that he would be making an official visit to Louisville in mid-June. It's believed to be the June 16th weekend. And this is coming on the heels of a fantastic showing down in the EYBL circuit in Memphis. In 4 games, he had 104 points, 22 rebounds, 17 assists, shots over 50% from the field and 50% or just under 50% from 3. He's been revered as one of the best 3-point shooters in the country. If you look at what Brandon Jenkins said about him, national recruiting analyst at 24/7 Sports, he compared him to Kyle Korver of the Milwaukee Bucks. He says, Kon Knueppel is arguably the best shooter in his class, one of the better shooters in the country. He demonstrates a stroke behind the arc that is by all means excellent. He has a generally good understanding of the game, plays within himself, does not attempt to do things he is not capable of. The stationary spot-up jumper, the catch-and-shoot jumper, and jumpers running off screens are a few types of the translatable shooting scenarios he has mastered. He brings a professional approach to the game and a very high floor because of his shooting prowess. Knueppel has proven that he is capable of shooting a high percentage at a consistent rate and should fit nicely into offensive structure as a quality piece at the next level, and so on. A lot to like about Knueppel's game. Travis Branham had a lot of great things to say. He said Knueppel has a high floor in his ability and knowledge of the game, of how to impact the game, and every facet will be very valuable to a college program for years to come. Also, in an article from Jody Demling of Cardinal Authority's 24/7 Sports site, he included some quotes from Kon and everything that he had to say about the Louisville visit. I'm headed there in mid-June. Kon said it, talking about, how much he's being prioritized. It obviously shows how much they want me and want me to be a part of the program. They totally make it clear about what they want to do with their players, and that is to send them to the NBA, and that is what I want to do. They like how I compete. They think I can get even better, and I want to be better. And that's why that's what they're all about, making their guys get better, and that's what I want to do. I want to get better and play in the NBA. I think over the weekend, the idea of the type of prospect Kon is sort of changed. He went from being, he's a lockdown shooter to, he's a phenomenal scorer all around. A guy that can create his own shot off the dribble. One aspect of his game that was really put on full display is his post game. For being 6'5", being a shooting guard, he has a very good post game to, his arsenal. Granted, will that still be the same when he's going up against taller defenders at the next level? That's to be determined, but his ability to not need a lot of space on that jump shot, the ability to create his own shot off the dribble, catch and shoot situations, off screens, dribbling into shots, both at the three-point level from behind the arc, but also in the mid-range. I think he's a true three-level scorer, just like Karter Knox. I think that there's some defensive upside there. But I think that at the end of the day, he's a player that a lot of people look at and think that he is a player that could be a guy that potentially scoring double figures year one in a college program, a potential one and done. We talked about another guy, Grady Dick, from Kansas this past year, one of the best freshman shooters, can shoot in a variety of different ways, but also an underrated facilitator, an underrated overall scorer, and does all of the little things, the hustle plays, defense, maybe not necessarily the best defender, maybe not necessarily the greatest passer, but couple that serviceability with the great shooting upside. And there's no reason to believe that, hey, who knows what he can turn out to be. We saw Tyler Hero get drafted pretty quickly up in the 2019 draft. Another guy in the 2020 class, Saddiq Bey. He was more of a veteran, but Saddiq Bey is a player that was a phenomenal shooter. Now he's a better defender than Grady and Tyler Hero, but Saddiq Bey, a guy who, teams bought in on his ability to shoot and developed his ability to create his own offense as well. And I think that that's sort of the idea for Knueppel as well. I like the Korver comparison because Korver is a arguably top 5 shooter in NBA history, but Korver was predominantly a three-point shooter with a very limited offensive game outside of that. And I think that that's sort of, understating the ability that Kon has to get his teammates involved, to get to the rim. He finishes well through contact, finishes well in traffic, extreme body control at the rim as well. So, even though he's not the most athletic in terms of lateral quickness or, vertical, he does a good job of creating that separation, and, defenders sort of overplay him at times due to that ability to shoot from essentially anywhere in the half court. So something just to focus on as we move forward. But Louisville is in a solid spot here for Knueppel, getting him on an official visit. We've seen how well Louisville is able to do when getting guys on official visits. Not only will he visit Louisville, but Virginia is another place, Ohio State, 2 other places that, have his eye. He's already made an official visit to Charlottesville, made an official visit to Notre Dame last year. I wonder how that's going to work out now that Mike Bray is no longer there and it's Micah Shrewsbury. Mike is a very solid replacement for Mike, so that would probably make sense that Notre Dame is still in the mix. But overall, still, nonetheless, a recruitment that we need to watch as Louisville fans. I would expect Knueppel to continue to rise up rankings. He's a top 20 player on On3 and Rivals, and it's time for ESPN and 24/7 Sports to get with the program. So, obviously, Karter Knox Kon Knueppel, two 2024 prospects that the Cardinals are really prioritizing in the summer, heading into both of their respective senior seasons. So, we're going to put basketball recruiting off to the side for a second as we dive into the weekly mailbag. Before we do that, I want to thank you all again for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder that the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. Also want to update you that the show will officially be going into off-season mode in June and July, meaning that the show will have around 13 episodes per month up until August and not the usual 19. So just know if there's a lack of activity that makes you a little concerned, that it's not necessarily, it's not something that is surprising. So it is planned. But nonetheless, let's conclude the month of May with a weekly mailbag segment. A lot of great questions to talk about on the show. First question, going off into the football side of things, overall thoughts on Louisville having a ton of week games. So that is pretty interesting. Louisville has, I probably should have brought this up before I started talking about it, but Louisville has a ton of non-Saturday games coming up. Georgia Tech is on a Friday. Murray State's on a Thursday. I think NC State's on a Friday. I don't know outside of that. Maybe Virginia. Virginia's on a Thursday. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, you got 4 non-Saturday games, which, I mean, in the grand scheme of things is a lot. But, I mean, it is what it is. I think it's pretty neat. I'll be going to the games against Georgia Tech, against Murray State, and then the other 2 are road games, I believe. No, Virginia's a home game. I'll probably be going to that one as well. I think it's pretty neat, primetime opportunity here for Louisville. I mean, it is what it is. I'm I'm not necessarily upset. I get it. It is what it is. But Louisville playing Indiana at noon on Saturday at Lucas Oil is kind of a buzzkill, I feel like. But, I mean, overall, it is what it is. Moving right on along, which ACC opponent do you feel like could give Louisville the most trouble this season, not including Notre Dame? That's a good question. I think that there's a couple teams, NC State, Pittsburgh, Duke, Miami. I'm going to go with NC State. It's on the road on a Friday night. You know how, rowdy Raleigh can get. Louisville has won there back in 2019. Yeah, 2019, Louisville won at NC State and then lost in 2021. But a Friday night game, you have Brennan Armstrong with his former offensive coordinator, Robert Anias, who's now at NC State with the NC State Wolfpack with Dave Doran. So I think it's probably the Wolfpack is what I would go with. So who do you think on this year's men's basketball team is going to surprise people the most? I think it's going to be Tyler Johnson. I think he's one of those guys that could sort of play like a Keon Minifield role that we saw him play at Washington last year, a name that a lot of Louisville fans are familiar with. A lot of people felt that he was possibly going to go to Louisville before going to Arkansas. A guy that played a backup point guard role but played a ton of minutes of nightly action and really did a great job of facilitating the basketball and showing that he, is a solid scorer as well. So I think that I would probably say Tyler Johnson. There's a couple of different names you could go with. I think players like, I don't know. There's people are viewing a lot of guys highly, so it's not necessarily a term of surprising because a lot of people are not going to be surprised by certain guys stepping up and showing out. So, it is what it is. Well, baseball question. There's been multiple players entering the transfer portal with Louisville's lack of success, missing the NCAA tournament twice in the past 3 years. Are you nervous? No, Dan McDonnell has said that, they need to use the portal more with this current state of the transfer portal, I mean, it's obvious that players are going to leave if they're not getting consistent playing time. I mean, it makes a ton of sense. With players leaving, Louisville now has the opportunity to go into the portal and address those needs. Dan McDonnell has, zoned in on roster management, identified roster management as being, a focal point for this offseason. So I'm going to trust a guy that's gotten this program to multiple World Series appearances. So, I mean, it is what it is. For the final question, do you think that Danilo Jovanovic would move into a walk-on role if there was another scholarship player to come about? This has been rumored. I mean, it's May 31st. Number one, I don't necessarily think that that's going to be the case because also there's I don't know who would be out there that you could go get. I mean, and there is players that, had entered the portal, but, took their name out of the draft that are still available. But I haven't heard that concrete yet. So I'm not going to entertain it. I would assume that Danilo Jovanovic is on scholarship next year for Louisville. So that's going to wrap up the mailbag for today's show, wrapping up the month of May of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here in June.